everyone, and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann, but you can call me H.
I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
And Q, looks like you are accompanied by somebody in the virtual studio today.
Look what the Q dragged in.
A K.
There is a K with us. Who is this K?
It's weird. I've recently been reduced to an initial. I'm Daniel Krupa, or sometimes people call me Krupa, or in my new company, I've been reduced to a K.
Yeah, but it's in the logo, right? So that's a nice thing.
You could say reduce, you could say distill.
Concentrated.
Yeah,
You're
concentrate.
a fine paste.
I've always aspired to be a fine paste.
Only the finest. So of RKG fame, and formerly of IGN, tell me about, you guys have been independent now for how long?
Since January 7th. It's weird when people ask me that because I struggle, because I'm now 33, I struggle to remember my own birthday, but I can always remember January 7th because it's literally the scariest day of my life because we all quit our jobs and took a leap of faith, and it was a bit scary, but it's gone all right so far.
So you have kind of made this transition, gone independent. You're doing with your two comrades, Rory Powers and Gav Murphy, right? Mm-hmm. You guys have been making essentially a show where you play through very difficult games, encourage each other is one of the sort of marquee shows that you do. And if people are interested, we can do plugs at the end of the show, but tell us a little bit about RKG and Retry.
Yeah, so it's a show we made at IGM for it was coming up to 3 years, and we did it as one of many other projects we used to do at IGM because we used to be involved in a lot of the day-to-day coverage, and we used to cover movies as well as video games, and it's just a thing that cultivated this audience, and over the years it was a better interaction than we got with anything else we made, to the point where we felt like we'd be remiss to not pursue it further and explore it, and it got to the point where it's 3 years, it's is this gone too long? We either do it now or we never do it, and we were just let's try it, otherwise I think you'd always be a bit could that have been something? So we went on a little adventure, and we're still on that adventure.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's been good.
And now you've come here to share with us a video game idea.
Yeah, I've had this I've had this idea for quite a while, actually.
Okay, well, so
it's literally the only idea I've ever had.
Well, that's good. So this is it. It's out there now.
So be nice. Yeah.
If you're tuning in specifically to hear Krupa here, specifically to hear K, which is very Men in Black, you're tuning into Playwright, and H, I think you pitch it the best. Tell us what the show is. What do we do?
Okay, well, what we do on this show is every week we challenge ourselves to come up with new ideas for video games. It's kind of like a game jam every week.
It's incredibly stressful.
So basically the way it works is that we each pitch a video game and take 10 minutes to basically workshop that idea. Sometimes it remains pretty true to what was originally pitched, and sometimes it changes completely. You have to just let go of things sometimes for the creative process to take place. So we make no promises about staying true to the original idea. Sometimes it'll inspire something completely in the opposite direction. But at the end of that 10 minutes, we cut ourselves off because we could go on forever. And then we have to give a title to whatever we call, throw it back out there into the community. And kind of the rules of it at that point are, it just kind of goes back to the community. They can continue to expand on it. They can get in touch if they have anything interesting that they would like to add to the idea. If people out in the community want to make this into a real game, we are not owed royalties or anything like that.
Whoa. I'm not giving away my idea for free, am I?
Oh, you didn't brief him on the fine points here?
I could have Overwatch 2 here.
That's true. And that's the risk that we take every week.
Just so you know, that's not my idea, just coming in going, what about Overwatch, but Overwatch 2, guys?
What about Overwatch, but a sequel?
Another one.
More characters. They're already doing that. What?
Okay, we usually give our guests the option of they can either pitch first and be the first idea, or you can go through sort of my and H's pitch and get a little sense of it.
Oh, let's do the latter. I want to get a sense of how much detail you guys have got. Like, I've got a lot of detail. I want to see like how to pitch it.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We're totally open to it being as detailed or detail sparse as you prefer.
Well, in my head, I've thought about it for quite a while, but like I want to know how specific you guys are going to get. So let's hear your guys first.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and get started then. So one of the games that I've been playing recently that I've really enjoyed, and I've spoken about it on Playwright before, I must seem like I'm kind of shilling for this game in particular, but something about it really connected with me, is a game called Do Not Feed the Monkeys, where you play a member of like a secret society whose computer is being fed security cameras and webcams and stuff from just random places in the world. And the idea is that like any camera that's hooked up to a network is fed back to this group, and then each member of this group just kind of gets a random set of cameras to monitor and to do whatever they want. And basically it's up to you to kind of like discern things from those scenes, like listen to the conversations of the characters that occasionally walk into the room. And so what I wanted to pitch today is something similar, but a little bit more kind of a mission focused. So you play a worker in a security company, and as crimes are reported, you are given control of the cameras in a location. So whether it's a bank or a casino or something, and basically you have to quickly swap between cameras to get as much useful evidence as possible before the criminals leave, before the crime stops. So as you are switching between cameras and the crime is playing out in real time, you have to choose to, focus your camera on faces to make IDs, focus on weapons, focus on bystanders to identify potential witnesses. You have a limited time to learn the layout of the building and to make sure that you get everything that you need, and you really only have one shot. And based on how much useful evidence you have and how well you've kind of documented the crime as it's happened, there's differing levels of success, basically, when it comes to prosecuting the criminals later. So I'm going to open that one up, start the clock. We have 10 minutes to workshop.
So I'm curious, when you're saying like you're doing all this documenting, is there like actual, I guess in my mind, screenshotting? Not necessarily using like the Windows screenshot or something. Is there like I want to particularly reference this later, or I want to sort of note things down for, I imagine.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to have reference points, and I'm kind of racking my brain, but I can't think of any games in particular. But I know that there are some games where like you hold down a button while you're hovering over something, and you see like this kind of bar fill around it. And, as you are holding the button down for longer, you're getting better and better information. So just kind of the longer you choose to focus on one detail, like the better information you have about it, but then you're also sacrificing some of the very limited time that you have to observe from other angles as well.
I guess on the flip side, when you're scripting the crime, you've got like within that crime, put certain key points where it's better to capture those moments. So it's like, for instance, there might be a point in a robbery where one of the robbers takes off their mask, which you might miss if you're not very good at the game. So I think it's finding out a way where if you're very au fait with the UI or switching between cameras, you'll know how to follow someone quickly. And they might literally take their mask off for like a fraction of a frame. But if you're good at the game, you will capture that.
Yeah. I think as the game progresses, it would get to very kind of complicated layouts. If you're surveying an entire casino, like that's a very large area with lots of hallways and blind corners and stuff like that. But maybe early on, you just kind of see, it's all just one room. And so as you are focusing in on specific details, getting facial IDs, weapon IDs, witness IDs, stuff like that, you are kind of restricting. The camera is zooming in, and so you can't see peripherally that much in the room. So you kind of have to train yourself to be not only gathering evidence, but also kind of keeping an eye on the rest of the scene as well, and just seeing if anything useful pops up.
I think there's a really cool thing about this idea with like the UI, because I think it'd be great to create the UI that whether it's a a police professional or a governmental person that would actually be using to do this job. So there'd be lots of on-screen tools that would let you do the job, like say Photoshop. So you can select all those tools to like manually switch. But if you're really good at the game, you would learn all the equivalent like shortcuts. So the learning curve is basically getting really good with the UI to do your job better.
It's full
like
Microsoft
that.
Flight Simulator for for security
Maybe it could
monitoring.
even kind of change from time to time. You know, I always like to keep players on their toes.
Like
and so maybe
actual update,
based on,
yeah.
maybe based on the location that, you know, whether they have the latest version of the software installed on their end, like there are certain functions that are restricted or certain things that are just in like different locations because they're still running like the Windows 98 version, some like bank in the middle of like, you know, Podunk, Ohio or something.
It's a hard job.
The game then, or the game developers at that point, almost are acting as like a weird security company for other companies, for vendors that don't really exist. You're like, oh, we added real-time facial zooming so you can zoom in on faces as like in a software update. And so as you release new, I guess, crimes, people can take advantage of those features, but because it's software, they can go back and maybe replay old crimes with new sort of features added.
Yeah.
Do you imagine that there's an aspect to this that is control over, say, camera placement? Like, is there consulting that you can do at the time? Because I know so many people were like, like a Kitchen Nightmares or whatever. The cameras seem very strategically set up, right? So maybe there's I really want this in this corner and that corner, because you're going to kind of need some amount of time, or maybe you expect this to happen in a round.
Yeah, possibly. I think it would be an interesting angle to allow for like custom crimes for the community to create. But one of the aspects that I wanted to maintain was being thrown into a space that you don't know and don't understand and have to kind of figure out quickly what are the tools that I have to work with. But maybe there are potentially certain tools that you can use to manipulate the environment as well. Like if you could turn on the fire sprinklers or something like that, then that would elicit a reaction from people. It might cause them to look upwards, which might be just the little break you need to make a facial ID or something like that.
So the whole idea you're talking about is like you're being called to monitor these crimes in real time. So it would be like there'll be very set amount of times these missions. So there's a lot of high pressure on getting it right first time. There won't be any period of time of like revising your work or going to consult a different angle.
Right. Yeah. Once,
no rewind or
obviously I think real security cameras would have recording functionality, but also you're kind of controlling like where they're looking as well. So you can kind of swivel them around to get the best information. So I kind of like to, within the fiction of the game, frame it as like, while the crime is happening, like you have to use the kind of rich tools that you have to gather the information. Otherwise, it'll be kind of useless afterwards.
How kind of nightmarish are we getting? Like, who do you work for in this game? How nightmarish are we getting with what access you have to microphones? And do you have just basically state-owned CCTV and private-owned CCTV? Or can you hijack other microphones, like in people's phones as well?
Interesting.
How watchdogsy are we getting?
That's an interesting idea.
I think that almost makes the game easier in some ways, because you'd be just like, well, that phone is closer, let's go to that one. I think like having the restriction on being like legitimate CCTV makes the game better, probably.
Possibly. I do also like the idea of if you were able to kind of infiltrate people's cell phones and stuff like that, that's also kind of taking a risk. You know, there's a risk reward there because
that's cool.
It could be in their purse, which could be muffled, and you could be getting useless audio, and then all of a sudden you've kind of thrown your entire focus for however long, and you're disoriented and everything into what ends up being kind of a dead-end microphone. So, you know, I think there's interesting risks there as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of also potentially saying, depending on the system that you're in, or maybe different levels have like different technical sophistication. And so options expand, but of course time never expands, right? Which is true of all things. So you're limited still in time, but I like it, a level that is potentially really old CCTV where when it comes to like pulling footage or whatever, you can only pull a limited amount of footage. So you can't even necessarily refer back to everything you wanted to capture. You have to be also deciding in real time, oh no, I guess that's not important and this other thing is.
This is where, honestly, the UI for this game could be amazing. Like, I think basically what we're saying is it's impossible to play on a controller.
Yeah, possibly.
Because you're almost doing like, you want it to be like a PC interface. Like, I'd almost want to be like at the governmental monitor system that allows you access to all this stuff. So I could be watching real feeds on half of my screen and scrubbing through footage on the right hand side of my screen. And that's the coolest way to like process this information. And like, that's the thing, is like, once you get better at using that systems, that's when you become like a better player of this game.
I know H has 3 screens, and finally a game that can take advantage of all 3 will be a delight.
The true triple monitor experience.
That's why he's come up with this idea.
I just want something that'll make it worth the investment.
It's natural. Only
Well,
natural.
just 2 with Netflix on.
Yeah, 2 different Netflix shows.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not far from the truth, actually. Yeah, so I think we talk a lot about the UI. I think there's a certain appeal to bad UI as well, or UI that looks like it's, from old unoptimized software with kind of like the clunky, blocky text lettering and everything like you would get off of an old VCR. I think that's pretty appealing.
You could even throw it into VR, right? And then have hazards like don't spill your coffee on the keyboard.
Like full on Minority Report the Minority Report version. Yeah.
So in VR, you're the person sitting at their desk looking at screens instead of being like within the microphone or the cameras. That's funny.
Yeah, you can feel your crappy security guard outfit and
that.
really immerse you.
Well, anyways, we're out of time on that one. We have to call ourselves at 10 minutes. And so let's come up with a name for that.
Maybe there's something with CC in it or CCTV.
That's pretty fun.
Well, what if you call it closed circuit?
Oh,
Closed circuit. That's pretty fun. That has a nice ring to it. It kind of fits in with like the hacking type of games like Hacknet and stuff that always have those types of names.
Yeah, people read lots into that name as well. I'm part of the circuit.
All right, cool. Closed circuit. I like it. Q, do you want to take us on to the next pitch?
Yeah, so my pitch this week is actually from a couple real works of fiction. I've been reading. I've only ever seen the movie The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, and so I've been reading the book. My fiance is like, you have to read the book, and so I'm a few chapters into the book, and there's a lot of time being spent describing all the stupid stuff that Jack has to do to maintain this hotel.
So Stanley Kubrick's like, that's going.
right. Stanley Kubrick makes it a passing conversation that happens, for a few moments in the film. And so, they talk about pumping the boiler and doing all this stuff. And so I started to think, what if you had a rogue-like type of management game or sim game where you're playing winter managers of the Overlook Hotel? And so you kind of start off with things being very mundane. You're trying to, keep different rooms warm. You're trying to beat off the cold, maybe in a Frostpunkian-like style. But of course, the longer your run goes, the more ghosts and demons show up to thwart you until eventually you and your family are dead, and it's time for the next family to move in and maintain it for another winter.
All right, starting the clock there. I do like in games that have like sanity meters, like Amnesia: The Dark Descent and
Bloodborne as well.
Yeah, that's right. I would love to see something like that in a management type game. That's not usually the type of game that this is paired with, but I think these go really well together.
So what's the interesting thing about doing the Overlook theme management game? So a lot of management games where it's based around services, you're trying to keep the customers happy. But obviously Jack Torrance and his family are recruited to keep the Overlook running during the harsh winter. So I think the manager says to let the elements take hold. So you've got like maintain the pipes, you've got to run the boiler. But like when the ghost stuff starts happening, what are you managing there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess we'd have to figure out how the ghosts like either add to the elements of it.
Like, yeah, so how banal are you treating them as almost like Jack's like, there's a ghost again? Or is it like, or is that throwing you off from doing like the banal stuff?
That's a good question. Maybe like, I know there's kind of the book talks about the mechanic of rotating heating rooms in the hotel. So maybe you have to do things, room 237 is definitely a room in this hotel, right? You have to keep that room warm. Is it like having to enter these rooms and maybe each, different types of rooms randomly are different sorts of ghost encounters? Maybe those are mini games in it of themselves, or yeah, it's a good question. Are these just like, a ghost again, or is there horror here?
I guess like depending how like close you're hewing to the source material is like whether you maintaining your relationships with your family is another management sim within a management sim.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is like he tries to maintain the pretense that he's fine to Wendy and Danny for so long, but he can't quite do it. So it is like success judged as like they think you're fine, like you're doing you're writing your novel,
right?
And
so
it's like Wendy is suspicious.
Wendy is suspicious. You haven't written a page today.
There's a lot of things to manage here. I think the thing that makes this the most interesting is also having to manage yourself and your own sanity. I would like if, I feel like there's cool ways of like tricking people into like the kind of going insane mechanics. So like if you don't spend enough time doing things that you enjoy or writing or whatever it is that kind of like staves off the insanity as you like witness more and more kind of ghostly or supernatural things, then maybe you do kind of unconsciously go on like murder sprees. And so as you're doing your chores, as you are tightening a bolt on something, then maybe like you go back later and that was actually like one of your family members that you murdered. Like that's pretty dark.
I think that's actually brilliant what you just said. Like if the layout of the game looks like, if it's top down and it's a hotel and there's lots of rooms and there's cleaning and all this sort of things, you would think it's a management game of the hotel, but it's actually a management game of your own sanity. So your sanity is almost, those stats are less discernible because it's more about managing everything else. But the thing you're really trying to maintain as a stable is your own sanity. I think that's really cool.
I was even thinking about like, because a lot of there's a game that came out on Epic Stories, and I'm struggling for the Satisfactory, and that is kind of like a large scale management game, but in the first person perspective. And so I'm wondering if there's a place for doing the sort of amnesia, Dark Descent perspective, or maybe an Until Dawn like aesthetic of a management game as well. Like, is there another perspective to be had with that sort of stuff?
I think like you could that would definitely make the supernatural stuff obviously way more impactful.
Right.
But in my head, like I'm just imagining like wandering around the Overlook in like an isometric view.
Yeah, that's cool. What I do like about the perspective shift is that the insanity, I know that's a little, ham-fisted or whatever, but whatever is like a measure of your sanity, you could bring in the sort of Kubrickian impossible geometry and taking turns where, this should be the outside, but it's another hallway, and you can kind of tell maybe instead of a meter
off.
Right, exactly. Instead of, something explicit, there's like implicit signs that you're seeing things.
I think that would work so well in a management game where you have to like go to the same areas again and again and again. So you would know the geometry intimately. So any deviation from that would be super apparent.
That plus like an audio cue, right? So you've got the I know we're saying Jack Torrance or whatever, but I love the idea of you're playing Grady potentially in this game as well, and going season after season of different people, and maybe you do your roguelike or your rogue legacy like thing where you get rolls of different stats, and so different people are going to maintain composure in different ways, but maybe be worse at like the maintenance stuff or bad at family stuff. Maybe
there's an Easter egg room where they're filming the moon landing. Do I remember the movie correctly?
Or if you walk too far towards the end of the map, you realize you're just in London. And that's where it was filmed. So it's like,
oh man, you know what, you say that, but a really nice detail would be if you did make it run based, as every run ends, that character ends up in the portrait wall.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's really nice. Like another character in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep adding to the 1920s party.
And then one day you're Ewan McGregor.
Perfect.
So going back to the graphical style, like I would like some room for kind of ambiguous graphics. I think that works really well in horror games where you're seeing something, but you're not quite sure what you're looking at. And that leaves a lot of room for imagination, and it leaves room for, just your eyes playing tricks on you, essentially.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you were talking about the isometric view, are you imagining isometric like sort of Stranger Things pixel, or sort of
like in my head, like I'm just thinking like Roller Coaster Tycoon or Theme Hospital.
Oh,
like,
that's very far removed.
Yeah, but also like because in my head, like Kubrick is just obviously so like well balanced shots, like, and also it's particularly The Shining, that carpet, and then the wallpaper design in Room 237 are just these great recurring geometric designs. Be so cool to see them in a kind of management game, like a top-down thing or even an isometric thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's like, it's almost one of those things. Maybe you need a manager mode, right? Where there's views and stuff where you're getting zoomed out versions of the hotel, and you can do things like activate different rooms, heats and stuff, and then maybe you can play with both perspectives in the same thing, because I think you want that, like, turn the corner and the twins are there sort of horror.
Of course, yeah.
So a little bit of both could be interesting. There's a map, right? Or the hedge maze, which would be really cool to see in isometric sort of space and navigating that.
So, yeah, I guess that's the cool thing. It's like trying to how you navigate them. I think like maybe if you have the top, like when Jack goes back to his office, it goes back to the overview of the Overlook and you're managing it en masse. But then there's certain responsibility, because this is the thing, is like unlike a lot of management games, Jack doesn't have a staff to manage.
Right.
He is literally one person. It's not like Theme Hospital or theme park where you've got like a staff of 1,000. He is literally the sole caretaker. So maybe it's like when you go back to the office, you can look at all the kind of numbers and the stats of the hotel. But when it actually means going out to tend to the hotel, it goes to first person. So it becomes more of a horror game.
Can you imagine having to actually like date your partner and like they want to go to the gold room on a date or whatever? Or you have, if you're not managing your family well, your child gets lost in the hedge maze or something.
I guess that's the other thing weird about The Shining, which not said, is like if you're going out into the hotel and you're having these supernatural experiences, like Jack in that movie is not scared of them.
Right.
They're his, like, by and large, they're his friends, they're his confidants, they're people that sympathize with him. Like he's having he doesn't really like his wife, they have a bad relationship, and he like unburdens himself to them. So it's almost like you have these NPCs that you're friends with. Like he's not scared of a lot of them at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. And trying to maybe they're giving you advice or something
on how to run the hotel based on their experience. They've they've always been there, as they say.
Right. Huh.
Well, we're out of time on that one. Let's close that down and come up with a name for it.
The weird thing is, Overlook is like almost kind of so much like Oversight in terms of a management name. It's really close to being something quite good.
You are kind of overlooking the...
There's something there, I think.
I might have you on the show just to give us names, period.
I do spend a lot of time doing names, yeah. Do you know Americans and British people use oversight in very different ways?
No.
Yeah, so they literally mean the opposite thing. So, like, if in Britain you make an oversight, it's like you've screwed up, you've missed a detail, and Americans use it as like an overview.
Oh,
like I would use overlook. Like if you were to overlook a detail, then that would be...
Yeah, so we don't use that in the same thing. So
interesting.
Yeah, so overlook's maybe a good idea. Like if you use it in the sense of like you miss a detail, that's quite good and quite funny for a management game.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the front box really selling itself more like a tycoon game too, just being like Overlook, a Colorado hotel management game.
Or it literally just straight down the line, hotel manager, but it's all the Shining imagery that you would ever want.
Yeah. Overlook Hotel Manager is probably, a nice verbose name that we could use.
So boring. A Hotel Manager 95.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the last pitch of the game of the show today. Our guest Kay, what are you bringing us?
Okay, so mine's it's a bit more preamble to it, so that might cut into my time briefly, but I'll try and get to it. Okay, so this is based on a real life experience that I had like about 5 years ago. It's the most terrifying experience of my life. I was staying in where I used to live in North London in a place called Golders Green. I used to live in like a complex of apartments. About 3 a.m. one morning, I heard a noise outside my window, so I woke up, I didn't have my contacts in, couldn't find my glasses, and I heard a man screaming, and he ran past my window at quite a distance, and I think he was just in his underwear, and he's like, they're coming for me, and then that's all I heard. And then I tried to look out of the windows in the front of back of my apartment, and I couldn't see anything. And I rang, my building was like quite an old-fashioned building, but we had like a guy who worked at the front of the desk that was always there, like concierge, I think you call him in America maybe. And he didn't know what was going on. And then the next morning I was walking through a field, because it was kind of like, even though it's London, there's like, there was some fields nearby. And all I found was a shoe and someone's wallet. And I was like, it's this weird mystery. And I phoned the police and I handed it all in, and nothing ever came of it. But what it reminded me of was like, I was in my apartment somewhere I should feel really safe, and I was looking out of all these multiple windows trying to figure what had happened, what was going on, like, was I safe, what was going on, how could I help this person? And what I'm pitching is basically a game where you're waking up at 3 a.m, something really scary is happening outside, so maybe shift it from that event to someone like looking in through your window at a distance. Kind of like, you know, in Halloween when Michael Myers is looking from beyond the hedge at Laurie as she walks down the street. So imagine if someone's trying to get into your apartment at 3 a.m. and you have to, like, almost like Firewatch, look through different windows, and the only person you can speak to is the concierge giving you advice, and you've got to work out strategies of what to do inside your apartment. So kind of like a stalking game, survival horror, home invasion, but also kind of like very narrative driven, like Firewatch.
Interesting.
Okay, cool. I think that gives us lots to work with. Let's start the clock and see where this gets us. This kind of has the feel of like a Five Nights at Freddy's type of thing, where, you know, as you're looking into one video feed, you understand that like all the other possible ways that these animatronics could be approaching you are being unmonitored, and so you're kind of having to split your attention between multiple points of entry.
Absolutely. I think it's like you, through the game, would learn good knowledge of the apartment. But it's that thing, it's like, as soon as you, like, if you can see the person, in my head, I'm essentially imagining something like a Michael Myers, like someone with a very, like, blank mask looking in from behind a hedge. It's like, I know he's there, looking in through this window. I might get more information by going to the living room. But if I do, they might disappear, and I don't know where they are next.
Right. That's like the scariest thing. I love that old internet video, The Creepy Watson, which was filmed in one of the Sherlock Holmes games, where, you know, just to briefly summarize, I would advise people look it up because it's genuinely hilarious. But in this Sherlock Holmes game, you play first-person Sherlock Holmes, and you have Watson as your assistant there with you. And they wanted to keep him always kind of close to you. So what they would do is, like, they didn't have walking animations for him. So whenever you looked away, they would just kind of warp him to a point that was like closer in the room to you.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So there was this video of people kind of like watching him, backing up slowly, getting far away from him, then like quickly kind of 360 turning, and he's right there in their face. So I think, yeah, the game knows what you are and aren't looking at. And I think the best horror games use that to great effect. Like Layers of Fear uses it all the time, you know, being able to determine what is hidden from view and what is safe to be moved.
Absolutely. And I feel like maybe the game almost has a very high replayability, but quite a short cycle, where maybe a typical playthrough is only an hour. So every time you choose to go to a different window, the killer gets closer no matter what. So it's kind of almost like you're trying to figure out, what can I do in this apartment based on these tools to get me to safety or stop them getting in. So it's almost like the Watson thing is a really good comparison. And then I think the other one is like every cat video on the internet, when you look away, the cat gets closer. And it's that principle. It's like, you've got 10 steps until this killer gets into your apartment. What can you do in that time? You can only change. It's almost like a puzzle game, essentially. What can I do? And in the apartment, there's maybe like 4 rooms: your bedroom, the living room, bathroom, kitchen. What can I do in those steps that can make the difference?
Right. That's interesting. So in this sort of mechanically, are you imagining that each potential success is an escape, or is there ever a defeat of the villain, or is there like a surviving for a period of time?
I think it's like surviving the night. And I think, like, depending how elaborate you get with it, like, part of my idea was like Firewatch, because I always thought Firewatch is great, and I always thought when you played it, even though it is kind of sinister, I thought there was something much more sinister going on with some of the I guess when you speak to any stranger, like you start trusting a stranger if they're nice to you, but then you're like, who am I actually speaking to? So one of the ideas I had was like when you're speaking to the concierge and they're giving you advice on like what they can do, is I was thinking like one of the big twists of the game was like the concierge is actually the person outside the window.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's a good one. One of the aspects of zombie games that I really like, not every zombie game does this, but it's always kind of special when they do, is allowing you to barricade the windows. Resi 4 did that, where you can push a big kind of closet in front of a door to keep people from getting in. So maybe your ultimate goal is to kind of barricade every door and window, every entry point as you're kind of learning about the space. But at the same time, maybe there's a point at which the killer gets inside and then the goal shifts to you getting outside. So if you think you can get the exit sealed up before he gets in, then like go for it. But you always want to leave yourself an exit strategy, which means an unprotected entrance, because if he gets in, then you don't want to be trapped in there with him.
I think that's the thing. Is like, I think it's managing the suspense of them being outside, because once they get in, it has to become more of a quick action game.
Right.
And, it's like a bit Nightmare on Elm Street-y, Home Alone. And that's like laying traps, and it's like that would be cool, but it's like you have to manage like that kind of real time combat. Whereas the other stuff, I feel like it's almost like turn based almost, because it's like if I leave this room, is there anything else I can do in this room? Is it better to stay here, and I guess kind of working out what is the cost of staying in a room versus leaving it. If I move to another room, I advance the killer one step, but I need to make sure that move to another room is worth my while. So maybe there's some random elements so you don't just learn what that pattern is immediately. So it's kind of a little bit random, maybe.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Is like as you leave a room, you close the door, the room becomes inaccessible or something, and you're kind of like, you can only bring so much with you, right, from room to room. Yeah. So you're like, every run is like, okay, I made it all the way to the end with the scissors from the bed, from the kitchen or something. And
it's a fine line between like doing something that could be cool and something that could be quite hackneyed and labored. But like, for instance, like to go back to my original story, like I woke up, I didn't have my glasses and my contacts were in the bathroom. To see better, do I go to the bathroom to get my contacts, or is that a waste of time? And it's like little things like that. So it's almost like taking very mundane things, because like if someone was going to break into your apartment in the middle of the night, it is actually in one sense quite a mundane thing. Someone like, what can you do in your apartment? But like just making these little micro decisions can make a huge difference.
I didn't even consider, I think that's an interesting mechanic. Like you're waking up, right? Potentially you don't have clothes, you don't have your glasses, you don't have, shoes are in a different, oh shit, I left my shoes upstairs.
I think that's kind of why the original event, I found it like so freaky, is because like it was like 3-4 a.m. That's a really weird period of the night, because like 2 a.m. people are sometimes still up coming home from late night outs. That's like weird time that no one's up, unless if you're up at that time for some weird reason. So it's kind of a weirdly isolating period of the day.
What I do like too is, you say runs are about an hour. I think you should have like only your internal clock to keep sense of how long the run has been. And like, maybe you, like, one of the goals is you always have a cell phone, or there's a phone in multiple rooms, and that kicks off the chain of events or something, and you only know once you start to hear distant sirens that like it's coming to an end.
I think that's what's cool about doing it in a small apartment, is like it's so familiar. There's a lot of good ways that you can offset a lot of the UI onto the environment. Like every room in your house, you can make it have a clock quite naturally, like the kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom. You can have a clock in each one of those, no problem. And it's trying to figure out what else can you put in those rooms that would make sense. I think that cool. I think like in my head, like even though I'm saying turn-based, I don't think any of that is apparent to the player unless they understand game grammar. Like everything, there's no UI at all. It's just like it's in the environment.
And then as the game progresses, maybe you can get like larger and larger homes until you're in the kind of like suburban America that Halloween took place in,
or there's multiple intruders.
Right. Oh yeah.
If you can get out of the house, like they can still get you. So like if you didn't bring with you the knife or the scissors to like stab and stagger a la Mr. X in Resident Evil or something.
I think part of what like I'm thinking about is like there's obviously that I think it's in Scream when they say like I think one of the girls says like, oh, why is she doing that? She's going upstairs when she'd be going out the front door. It's like that's all well and good saying it when you're not in it. And then it's like it's trying to think is like in a like slasher like situation, obviously you would like to have strategy. What does that strategy game look like? Because a lot of the games are more like just broad decision based, or it's like, you know, can you survive a scare jump? Like, and like are you good at aiming? Like if you're going to go to like Resident Evil, it is still an action game as well.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas this is much more like, can you do tactics under pressure and think laterally? Which I don't think other games do yet.
And maybe going upstairs might be the right answer for certain situations. You know, maybe you just need like
for the right sort of homes. Yeah,
you need a room that you can close off the only entry point to. You know, you just need to isolate yourself for a little bit.
I kind of love the idea of Rainbow Six sieging this and like allowing there to be like there's 3 homes at first, and then like you can release like new homes essentially, but you're always like dealing with the looking out windows. Can you imagine the horror of looking out a second floor window? And the killer is like got a ladder on it or something. Just like, I know you're there.
It's like the story that Wes Craven used to tell about why he came up with Freddy Krueger. Is like there was one, obviously the story in the newspaper about teenagers in East Asia dying in their sleep, but the other one for the actual person, I think when he was a kid, he looked out of his bedroom window and there was a guy like in an old hat that like Freddy wears. And Wes Craven looked out his bedroom window and this guy saw him looking out. He could tell that he scared him. So Wes Craven, as a little kid, hid. And then he looked back out and this guy just stayed there looking at him and just laughing. And it's I know, it's like, oh my God. Like, as a grown-up, you've got to be pretty twisted to like scare a kid that intentionally.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's all the time we have on that one. Let's close that down and come up with a name.
I have a name and also a title treatment, so it would be called Restless, because that's like...
Restless,
so you're like got up in the middle of the night, but you're moving from room to room, so you've got to like always be moving, so it kind of like fits both definitions, and then it'd be styled like an LCD alarm clock.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. I like that. Restless. I think that fits in.
I'm unsettled.
Yes, that's what I wanted to bring to proceedings.
It's wonderful.
Anyways, on normal shows in which we don't have a special celebrity guest, we usually have pitches from the community come in, and if you would like to submit a pitch in the future, you can do so by going to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at playwrightcast to send in any of your pitches, and we will discuss them here on the show.
Special thank you to Protodome for the use of our theme song Hello World off the album Blue Noise, and the Kane and Rinse Podcast Network. Go check out shows like Kane and Rinse, where they review video games, and Sound of Play with video game music, and The Sausage Factory, interviews with game developers. And hey, while you're checking out stuff, Krupa, why don't you tell us where we can check out your stuff?
So we were really lucky. We got youtube.com/RKG, which is like, that's the place where we publish all our videos. So
it's because nice everywhere the manager at YouTube looked out the window, you were there.
We stole it.
You said,
I mean,
I'm looking in.
We can't get it for love nor money on Instagram or Twitter. So they're just both inactive accounts. But that's where we publish all our stuff. So we mainly do like lots of Let's Plays, but ones we actually put a lot of time and effort into, so we don't just turn a camera on, we put a lot of time and love into them.
I know you guys just started the Resident Evil 2 series, right?
Yes, so we typically structure them like TV, without being too protective, but we structure them more like a TV season where we edit down like 4 hours into an hour of really good stuff, so we put a lot of time into it, and yeah, we're trying to make more one-off cool videos as well.
Very cool.
Sounds great. And to take us out of the show today, I'll give a miniature pitch. How about a Mario Maker-like game, but you are able to construct your own point-and-click adventure games?
Okay.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.